Good morning, attendees, participants, entrepreneurs, leaders, students, and everybody joining us this morning. Welcome to the inaugural SBS NCBA Virtual SME Conference. We are really excited to have you here. My name is Martin Baya, and I'm a faculty member at Strathmore University Business School. I will be your MC and moderator for the day, and I look forward to engaging with you. I have with me an illustrious set of speakers and panelists who will be engaging you over the coming week, kicking off today, September 10th, Thursday, and building on to Thursday, September 17th, a week from now, when we will have day 2. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Professor Ruth Kiraka. I'll be referring to her as Professor Kiraka, and Mr. Stephen Gakuya. I'll be referring to him as Stephen, to bring us up to speed and introduce us to this conference and get us kicked off on what we hope will be an exciting and transformative session. Professor Kiraka, without further ado, karibu sana.
Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you and welcome to everybody who is joining us today. A very warm welcome to our 8th SME conference, but the first virtual conference that we are holding for SMEs. This is an initiative of NCBA Bank and Strathmore University Business School. We're very delighted to have all of you on board to discuss key issues affecting SMEs, especially during these very uncertain times. Our conference theme for this year is Unlocking SME Potential to Increase Resilience and Excellence in Uncertain Times, which is indeed a very appropriate theme at this time. But what is resilience? This is the ability to bounce back after being stretched, pulled, bent, or pressed. It is the ability to be strong, healthy, and successful again after something bad or difficult has happened. 2020 has no doubt been unique in many ways. The pandemic has indeed pulled us, it has stretched us, it has pressed us, it has made us rethink our business models, our markets, our processes, our products, our service delivery, our customers, and even our leadership and people management styles. And yet, we not only need to be resilient, which is to bounce back, but we also need to be excellent. So what is excellence? And this is the quality of being outstanding and being extremely good, being able to pursue action with courage, with commitment, and with resolve. In this instance, it suggests that we need to rethink, to explore, to re-innovate, to reinvent, to reimagine our different business models, different markets, products, services, and our leadership. As business owners and entrepreneurs, we are finding that humility is the new normal in leadership. The workplace is rapidly changing, and it is evolving through the actions, interactions, and decisions the leaders and business owners are making every day. We need intellectual humility that allows us to be open-minded and to be able to embrace the world as it is, to listen more, to learn more, to be curious, and to expose ourselves to different ideas and people and the possibilities that they bring. This conference will run over 2 mornings, that is today and next Thursday morning. In today's sessions, we will hear about policy directions and interventions. We'll hear about market sustainability and growth, and also digital transformation, and how all of these can help to unlock the potential of SMEs towards excellence and resilience during these difficult times. Next week, we'll have more sector-specific discussions that will help us to unpack the dynamics in different sectors and the interventions that are needed to make those sectors thrive and succeed. We look forward to very enriching and fruitful conversations, as well as clear directions on the way forward as we continue to engage with SMEs and to propel them to greater heights of success and growth. So this is a partnership between the government, between the private sector, and higher education, academia, all of us working together to support SME growth and success. So thank you once again, and welcome to our first virtual SME conference. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Kiraka. Stephen, karibu sana on behalf of NCBA.
Martin, thank you very much. Our dear customers, our speakers, our group managing director, our partners from Strathmore, it's a great pleasure, and I am pleased to welcome you for this fifth conference in conjunction with Strathmore. We started the first one in the year 2016. It's a great honor to host you this morning. And as NCBA, this is part of our non-financial solutions or services that we give to our customers. We've had great partnerships working with Strathmore. We've held several conferences with great outcomes from our customers. And one of the biggest impact we've had is we've taken through 158 of our business banking customers through the SEDEC program who have graduated. And just before COVID struck, we had a full class of 32 customers who are going through the program. And I want to reassure them that we are working together with Strathmore to see how they can be able to progress the course and eventually graduate. The purpose of this event is to really provoke our SMEs in terms of how do they reboot, rethink, and reorganize their business models in the wake of COVID. Because my guess is that COVID is going to be with us for a long time. We have all adopted to new norms, and it would be difficult for us to go back to our old ways. So it's a forum to provoke our way of doing things. How do we retool our businesses? How do we retain our staff? How do we create more markets and delivery channels? It will also help us to provoke our thoughts in terms of how do we adopt to new work methods and processes. The office is becoming a very lonely place nowadays. As we talk, I think initially where I'm sitting, we used to have a team of almost 100 staff. And this morning we only about 5 or 6 or thereabout. So it's going to help us to ask ourselves some of the difficult questions that we've possibly not thought through in terms of how do we keep our staff engaged in the wake of the pandemic and yet make them more productive. The number 3 thought provocation that we go through with this forum is how do we accelerate digitization and creating efficiency in terms of taking advantage of IT to deliver goods and services. And that's why we deliberately, came up with this theme of creating increasing resilience and excellence in times of uncertain times like we are currently. And it will also offer us a great platform for networking, creating new relationships. Previous forums which were face-to-face, we could have what we used to call exhibitions, and I believe we shall have one next week on Thursday. You'll be able to create more networks, more customers, and more friendships. And we've seen groups and chamas evolving from these kind of engagements. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you today. And I'm looking forward to a very productive discussion around this topic on unlocking SME potential to increase resilience and excellence in uncertain times. So thank you and karibuni sana.
Thank you very much, Bwana Stephen, for those opening remarks, as well as Professor Kiraka. And as we progress, we would like to welcome the heads of institutions, Strathmore and NCBA, to give us a set of opening remarks. For all the participants who are just joining us from around Kenya, from around the world, those on Zoom, those following on YouTube, those following via Facebook, and at some point also be following us via K24. We welcome you to tweet. We welcome you to tell the world about this conference. It's day 1, day 2 will be a week from now. We want everybody to know that we are doing something special for SMEs. You can also follow aspects of the proceedings from our website. You can see the link on the screen, conference.strathmore.edu. We are joined by Dr. George Njenga, the Executive Dean of Strathmore University Business School. And we will have a set of opening remarks from Dr. Njenga, followed immediately by opening and welcome remarks from John Gashora on behalf of NCBA. Dr. Njenga, karibu, the floor is yours.
Asante sana. You can hear me well?
Loud and clear, karibu.
Very good. Thank you very much for everything, Martin, and for inviting me. I first will have to give my gratitude to Dr. Angela Dunge and all the team behind the scenes and the team from NCBA for this virtual SME conference. As usual, it is very close to my heart for the simple reason that it is the bread and butter of the country. And we cannot gainsay that enough, that our country depends, our region depends, our Africa depends on how we face the small and medium enterprises. And the reason we call them small is not because they are small, it's because they are ordinary. They belong to the ordinary people. And the ordinary people who sweat to put bread on their family table every day, the ordinary people who try to resolve the products and services that are needed in every sector of our economy. We have very many difficulties, and Bwana John Gashora, I thank you for helping us participate in serving the SME sector in a very special way to resolve the daily needs of our family lives across the country. Now, my remarks, I want to be very positive. The first thing I want to say is that you continue being the largest employer of the country. I also want to say that it is within these auspices of SMEs that we continue having the most promising innovation, especially digitally. It is clear that the large companies in our country, which sometimes are not as big as they ought to be because of the policy and structure of our economies around the region, it is these small, medium enterprises, though, where we find that the gift of the earth, the minerals, the agri-produce, the services to the agri-production, the bringing food on the table, medical facilities and equipment, transportation, the small contractors who build the houses in the estates. I'd like to make you see that the whole economy, in one way or another, ladies and gentlemen, has a significant input of SMEs. And for that, kudos. I also want to say that probably it's in the SMEs, especially when they're networked through cooperatives, through investment groups, through another most difficult structure, which is not properly foreseen in the structure of government, and that is the communities, the village communities, the communities from our various tribes across the country. So if you go to Marsabit, you go to Turkana, you go to the refugee camps, you go to Garissa, you go to the Mijikenda, you will find that the way people arrange themselves around the SME concept and investment concept, we have just trained, well, a few years ago, we trained 600 of these groups from Kilifi, going all the way to Lamu. And you find that they tend to work together around these community structures. The Maasai is here in Ngong. Problem is that this is not foreseen properly in the structure of government and in the structure of private ownership of assets and liabilities and the management of such. And this concept goes all the way to even our markets. The city council market, you'll find that people tend to organize themselves into structures that are not properly foreseen within the government structure. And we generally call them the informal sector. So one of these is, for instance, the God-forsaken, and I say God-forsaken because that is the way we treat them in this country. The God-forsaken little businesses that introduce education in the slum areas. We don't want them because they're informal and they cannot be managed. We do not serve them because they don't know what gifts the government has, what gifts the community has to help them serve and do their businesses properly. And during this time of COVID, that has worsened. Okay. So still, despite all those difficulties, I want to comment that we are still the backbone as SMEs. And now I'm not talking as a dean or a professor. I am talking as one of the people who is in the SME sector as well, trying to make ends meet. Now, on the other hand, my dear colleagues, let's thank the government for what it is trying to do. I know the government is very steadily looking at the question of the cost of inputs and the cost of infrastructure like transportation, the cost of import and all that. Whether we know it or not, there is an effort amongst the leaders to try and put things together. Right now, as we speak, I know that Treasury and Ministry of Industry and Trade are working on the concept of guarantee credit. Why? Because the credit to SMEs is very high. Now, let me just combine all those things and say one thing. After looking at all those little things, I realized that the SME owner, the cooperative, the investment group, is always alone. Somehow, we don't have a voice. And that voice is time that we started thinking. And our dream here at Strathmore University Business School is to help create that voice across every county. Every county must have at least a business development center that is controlled by more than 1,000 SMEs. And at the private level of SMEs, not mixed up. Okay. And you speak to policy, you speak to data, you speak to the value chain of your business so that we can see where the input is necessary. And most of all, we want the government, with that say that we are going to ask from them, from our unity, a one-stop shop for every license and every need that a business requires from formalization of government, from government entities to operate. This business of having 15 licenses and some you don't even know where they're coming from. We forget about that business. We have to cancel that business. It's too expensive for our SMEs. We have to get the credit guarantee scheme as the most important policy right now. We have to get the banks to think of the SMEs. I have summarized very many things, and I'm sure that with NCBA, we are going to foster this work in the counties and in every region of the country with time. But in the next 5 years, we should work at least for 11 counties and make them do well and get those SMEs structured. Bwana John Gashora, asante sana kwa kufika hapa. Nimesema asante sana. Tutengeneze hizi SMEs, sababu hapo ndio chakula iko. Asanteni sana. Martin, over to you, or should I invite John?
That's actually you can invite John on our behalf. You are our host. And thank you for those welcome remarks, Dr. Njenga.
Thank you very much. John, I know that you have been in big business, but you came back to help us build our small businesses here in the country. Karibu sana mzee. And I think you just help us to go for it, because I see that is what you keep telling us in your advertisements. Go for it. Eh? Karibu John and all the team.
Thank you. Asante sana. Thank you, Dr. Njenga, and my good friend Martin Bayer for the very kind ones. I must say that I met Dr. Jenga through Martin many, many years ago, and the friendship has continued. So I do appreciate that very much, and I'm glad to be working with you. I also want to pay very special tribute to the Strathmore team of Dr. Angela Dunge, Professor Kiraka, and others, and also to my team at NCBA led by Stephen Gakuya for organizing this opportunity for us to engage. I always like to listen to Dr. Jenga because he is very passionate about SMEs. And I remember the big conference we had at Strathmore with the president. And I remember when we had a side meeting with the president, I kept asking myself, how do I get this guy to shut up so I can say one or two words? Because he was so passionate about SMEs. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Really delighted to engage with you this morning to discuss this issue that's facing many businesses today, which is how to survive and recover from the effects of COVID-19. This forum is organized by NCBA in partnership with Strathmore University Business School and presents a great opportunity for us to come together to hear from panels of experts and SMEs on how to unlock the potential of this very vital SME sector. It is unfair that I'll be speaking here today because I would not claim to be an expert on SMEs, but I would say this, that the good thing is that this platform has given us a lot of opportunity over time to engage with SMEs, get to understand them. And therefore, I'm here to learn just as much as I am one of the hosts for this conference. So my central message today is that we're in an unprecedented position as a country, and the normal rules no longer apply. This pandemic has taught us that we cannot resort to the usual solutions in such unusual times. COVID-19 is already having a profound effect on people's lives and the economy. We have seen large-scale loss of life and severe human suffering globally. It is the largest public health crisis in living memory, which has generated a major economic crisis, halted production, muted consumption, and deflated business confidence. Macro and microeconomic projections remain bleak, unfortunately. Global GDP is projected to decline by between 5 and 8%. Global unemployment, on the other hand, is estimated to rise by as much as 25 million, signaling that sustaining business operations will be particularly difficult for SMEs. In Kenya, the scenario is of course similar, with IMF predicting a GDP contraction of 0.5%, downwards from 1% growth they projected in April. While the depth and extent of this crisis remains unclear, what is clear is that we must all do our part in supporting each other through this crisis and maintain an unwavering optimism that this too shall pass. And that's why I'm glad to hear Dr. Jenga, when he spoke, he said he chooses to look at the optimism of this whole situation. And that is the point of today's discussion. On our part as NCBA Bank, we believe we have a central role to play in supporting the economy during this crisis and in facilitating a rapid and sustained recovery afterwards. We have taken significant measures to cushion customers during this uncertain period. We have extended loan repayment periods by up to 12 months, restructured over 50 billion worth of loans, absorbing restructuring charges and waiving fees on mobile transfer, personal cashless transactions, and restructuring fees as well. We continue to find ways to add liquidity in the market, including our most recent announcement to repay our 7 billion shilling bond earlier than scheduled in order to add liquidity to the market. We have built strong liquidity and ready to support the recovery when the time comes. These actions have all come at a significant cost to the bank, as we have forgone over 1 billion shillings to date in revenue in order to support our customers. We have taken these unprecedented measures because we fundamentally believe that our customers' promise to inspire greatness must be upheld in good times and, more importantly, in difficult times. Saying that, I do realize that we must still do more, that we have not always been there for our customers, especially SMEs. I speak to a lot of you, and I know that the fact that newspaper auction pages continue to be full is keeping a lot of us awake. All of us will have, therefore, a lot of learning from this conference. The impact of this crisis has been felt more acutely in the SME sector, particularly with businesses that depend on daily footfall to drive revenue. Many businesses have either closed, unfortunately, permanently, or drastically reduced their headcount. Even some of the more resilient SMEs indicate that their cash reserves are quickly diminishing. But within this sea of despair, there are bright spots that are emerging that tell a true story of the resilience and fortitude that is representative of the SME spirit. Factories have quickly been repurposed to supply PPEs and meet a growing demand. Hotels have been refitted to serve as isolation centers. And across all our neighborhoods, enterprising individuals have turned their vehicles into roving vegetable markets. And I urge you on this, please do support them, because that is their only way to survive. This is what we mean by unusual responses to an unusual set of circumstances. Those who sit and bemoan their fortunes, unfortunately, will be surpassed by those who see opportunity in these dire times. It is a matter of survival. The survival and growth of SMEs is of paramount importance to the country, considering that they perform that very important stabilizing function in society by distributing income from a macro and microeconomic perspective. As an engine in the economy, SMEs drive growth, create employment, especially among the youth, and spearhead innovation. For large companies and government, SMEs provide key supply chains for goods and services to companies and households, helping to keep the wheels of the economy in motion. SMEs can leverage their agility to design and incubate new technologies and business models to build a better future. Many of the country's SMEs have the potential to become tomorrow's large corporations, the businesses that this continent needs to continue on its path to growth and prosperity. And that is why we must be cheerleaders. That is why we must be optimists. That is why we must keep reminding everyone that this is a moment for SMEs to roar and take their rightful place in steering the recovery of our economy through agile, nimble solutions and approaches. The success of the SME sector will be a collective success. And as such, we at NCBA Bank are committed to enabling dialogue and partnerships between stakeholders that can support this vital pillar of our economy. We will continue to enable access to capital and support sound macroeconomic policies that will fuel the engine of the SME growth. So I take this opportunity to thank you for gathering here to be part of this journey, of this discussion, and for your commitment to bolstering this vital sector of our economy. I am confident that the discussions today and next Thursday will help build a more resilient and robust SME sector. Thank you, and I turn it back to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, John. We really appreciate those insights, and I think they shall feed into the broader conversation we are having. Just as we welcome our keynote speaker, whom our Executive Dean, Dr. Njenga, will do on behalf of the organization. What I can highlight is this triple helix of government, industry, and academia. We have heard from academia, Dr. Njenga. We've heard from industry, John, and we will be quite delighted to hear from government. We are also joined by other actors from the executive. I invite you, Dr. Njenga, to invite our Honorable CS. And I also wanted to share to the participants, we are live on Facebook and we are also live on K24 for this segment. Dr. Njenga, over to you.
Thank you, Martin. I'll introduce two people. Not that I don't have very many people here to introduce, to recognize. And let me first of all say that I appreciate you, Honorable Betty Maina, Cabinet Secretary of the Ministry of Industrialization. I want to thank you for your friendship. I want to tell you that with Professor Kiraka, with Dr. Angela Dunge, and the entire team of our executive education function supporting the SMEs, that we are looking in a very particular way when considering the SME sector, how to increase, strengthen, train, and support the women enterprises across the country. To that extent, I am sure that if you give cognizance, especially to the team under Angela, they will speak to you about the possibility of setting up now an SME for Women Enterprise Center and Leadership, Enterprise and Leadership Center. We also want to recognize the women who have transformed our country. Now, there are two other people. I will start with Anne Motahi. Anne Motahi, thank you very much for being here. Before I invite Betty to give her speech on all our behalf, I want to recognize Anne Motahi, with whom I've worked a lot to support the Juakali sector. And she, in particular, I want to establish here, was part of the inspiration and passion for that presidential roundtable on SMEs. It was because of her year and her passion for SMEs that I can almost say she left the chair of the Standard Chartered Bank Group, the Standard Group board chair, to serve this very special place, this special area of our economy. I recognize you if Phyllis is there from the KEPSA and also Catherine, I think, is it Carol or Catherine? I sometimes forget, I beg your pardon sincerely. Carol from the Kenya, I forgot it now. I ask pardon for that.
We have Carol Karoga from Kenya Private Sector Alliance.
Yes, Carol Karoga from Kenya Private Alliance. And
greetings, Carol, and she'll be one of our panelists in the latter session.
I apologize, I didn't take note of it. Next time I will write it officially. Now over to you, Betty. I know how you have served the business sector, especially when you served it most in the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. I now welcome you because I am sure you're looking at us very delicately and very passionately on how to transform SMEs in this market. Welcome, Honorable Betty Maina.
Good morning. Unfortunately, it is not Betty who will be addressing you. Because I expect most people expect a lady. Betty Maina is a lady, and the person talking is a man. My name is Lawrence Karanja, the Chief Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Trade, Industrialization and Trade. For reasons, for very good reason, Madam Betty Maina could not attend this meeting. She had confirmed up to yesterday, but she is attending a meeting she could not delegate. Therefore, she has delegated the honor and duty to me as her deputy to come and address this gathering. Professor Jenga, the Executive Dean, Strathmore Business School, Mr. John Gachora, the Group Managing Director, and your team. This conference could not have come at a better time than today. When Madam Betty requested me yesterday to come in the evening to come and address the conference, and she gave me the topic, I asked myself, what a paradox, the topic, that is resilience and excellence. And when I listened to Professor Kiraka trying to expound on the resilience and excellence, and then again in uncertain terms, that you're supposed to be to excel, that is, you bounce back, you excel, and in uncertain terms. I said, this topic must have been set by people in academic world. Otherwise, in the business world, they want something which is clear and straightforward. But the people in academic world, they must come with something which must take time for one to think, expound, and unravel. And as a ministry, we are happy to be here, especially to partner with both NCBA, Strathmore Business School, and above it all, the SMEs, which are close to the heart of the government of this country and the heart of His Excellency, the President. As you are all aware, small and medium enterprise are the life force of Kenyan economy. They constitute about 98% of all business in the country. And when you talk about SMEs, it ranges from that farmer, tea farmer in Kericho. There is a cashew nut farmer in Kirifi. There are people in the matatu sector, people in Mtuba, people in small industries and factories, people who are selling tea in the kiosk, other people who are in IT, retail business, small distributorship. Therefore, it is a wide range of people. And in Kenya, statistics show that they employ, or this sector employs more than 15 million. Its contribution to the national GDP is about 33.8%. That was its contribution last year. And they make a huge contribution on multiple fronts. That is from innovation, new markets, consumers, providing higher tax base, generating employment, and in effect, alleviating property, because SME, as you are aware, it is the largest employer in Kenya. Keeping this in mind, it is worth noting that the business space in Kenya, just like the rest of the world, is growing through profound changes. In the past decades, technological advancement and regulatory structuring have transformed how people do business worldwide. Markets that were formerly distinct, discrete, and vertical have coalesced across their own boundaries with a massive investment in technological innovation. This has meant that governments all over the world have had to grapple with the reality that new regulations are needed to facilitate all these changes effectively without disrupting the flow of business. Much more recently, the COVID-19 pandemic has further necessitated a total and urgent rethink of how SMEs, both small and large SMEs, interact with the market space. Now, in Kenyan outlook during and post-COVID-19, and when we talk about post-COVID-19, it is quite it's something which is we are finding very difficult to define, because we keep saying when will it be, when will it start talking about post, because nobody knows when COVID is coming to an end. Therefore, that is why we are now in the business sector. We are saying we have now to start adapting and living with a new normal. And unfortunately, and that is a good thing about the topic of today, the new normal keeps shifting every day. And that is why I'm certain the topic of the uncertainty was put in, uncertainty was part of the today's topic about when you talk about resilience and excellence, then you also talk about in uncertain terms, especially at times because of the COVID-19. Kenyan's economic growth averaged at 5.7 in 2019, placing the country as one of the fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa. The recent economic expansion has been boosted by a stable macroeconomic environment, positive investor confidence, and resilient service sector. However, our economy is currently experiencing challenges through the supply and demand shocks on external and domestic fronts, interrupting its recent broad-based growth path. Apart from COVID-19 pandemic, we have had a few challenges, other challenges, of course, locust affected the farmers in SMEs, of course, and other farmers. We also had the issue of the floods, and all these have negatively impacted on the food security and growth on agriculture sector in the country. Agricultural sector is a major part of our SMEs. Looking specifically at the private sector, the COVID-19 crisis is detrimental to farms through 4 channels. That is 1, foreign demand of the goods and services, because some people have lost their job. Therefore, their buying capacity has gone down. The revenues have decreased, reduced input in supply, tightening of credit conditions, and increased uncertainty, therefore making people not to commit their money because they don't know what the future holds. When is this COVID-19 ending? How will it be after COVID-19? Even though we saw recent improvements in Kenya gross domestic product, it is projected to decelerate in 2020 due to the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic. The Central Bank of Kenya revised its estimate for 2020 from initial 6.2% to the current 3.2%. Now, there are some risks which are emerging in business environment and business continuity, which we need to address briefly. Today, micro and small enterprises are faced with overwhelming competing challenges and uncharted waters as they continue to navigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Some of these challenges include, first, impact on strategy. The SMEs are realizing that they must outmaneuver uncertainty by course correcting as circumstances changes. This requires them to reassess assumptions, whatever they used to assume that if you do this, this will happen. They evaluate the scenarios and again strengthen their ability to sense and respond to the new changes. There are also serious impacts on customers. Customers' habits have drastically changed. The coronavirus has forced SMEs to reevaluate how they can leverage on the way they communicate with their customers. Initially, an SME would just open a shop. Customers will come, they'll buy, they'll see, they'll do the window shopping, and then eventually agree on what to buy or make a decision on what to buy and what not to buy. That is no longer the same. We are now in a new era. People are buying goods and services online. So therefore, you must start to imagine how will you interact with your customers online? How will they deliver relevant customer experience where they work, and how digital channels can be used to support business continuity through the crisis and beyond. Because with the current situation, even after COVID, the way the customers will be behaving after COVID is not the way they used to behave before COVID. Therefore, it is important for those in SMEs to prepare how to deal with the customers post-COVID. There is also an impact on the workforce. SME globalists are experiencing unprecedented workforce disruption. This includes the issue of social distancing. While if even a business, people used to have 10 people. In future, right now you're being told you need to have 5 people, but the productivity is expected to remain the same. The issue of working from home, how will you be supervising your employees who are working at home? Businesses are rising to the challenge and learning how to navigate massive workforce shifts, such as urgent need to shift to a remote workforce to protect and empower the employees, and reorganizing the work shift to ensure that the business continues. There is also an issue of impact on operation. That is fundamental changes in consumer behavior, supply chains, and routes to market are disrupting business operations. Responding to the pandemic has underscored the enterprise to accelerate the adoption of agile ways of working and value chain transformation to help outmaneuver the uncertainty. There is also impact on finance. We are in an environment where the enterprises are faced with plummeting revenues and increased cost. Further interventions to adopt may also require investment in key technologies, processes, and people. SME are now looking to build necessary resources required to seize new emerging opportunities. In response to this, the government has established the Credit Guarantee Scheme for SMEs and is currently in the final stages of operationalizing it. It is aimed at ensuring the survival of our SMEs and sustainability going forward. I heard Dr. Jenga talking about the credit guarantee, and this is something we are almost at the tail end, because once the government developed the credit guarantee scheme, there had to be legislative backing of the scheme, and that is what we are about to conclude. There is also the impact on technology. Even before COVID-19, many SME faced considerable IT challenges. Now, COVID-19 is pushing SME to rapidly operate in new ways, and IT is being tested as never before. Once we reach the other side of this pandemic, I don't know when that one will be, we will have to accelerate high digital transformation in order to survive, because IT, the way of doing business for the SMEs, how to market, how to reach your customer, how to deliver, how to correct debts, you must now, all SMEs must develop new ways of doing business through IT. Then there's also the impact on industries. All industries have been impacted by COVID-19 crisis with varying degrees and severity. Of course, in some areas, they had positive impact. Majority have had negative impact. And some who have been affected negatively have stronger defenses, while others will struggle to return to constantly shifting normal. Consumer demands patterns are shifting, global supply chains are disrupted and remain under pressure. And different regions, markets, and government are responding uniquely to COVID-19, because how one sector responds to COVID-19 is not how the other sector is not the way the other sector will the other sector is responding. Now we must ask ourselves, forging, which is the way forward, and how is innovation and digitization changing trade? Due to the challenges of COVID-19, businesses have had to quickly embrace digital innovation in order to ensure business continuity. This digital transformation has reduced the cost of engaging in international trade, helped diffuse ideas and technologies, and connected to a greater number of business and consumers globally. Digitalization increases the scale, scope, and speed of trade. It allows for firms to bring new products and services to a larger number of digitally connected customers across the globe. It also enables firms, notably the smaller ones, to use new and innovative ways and digital tools to overcome barriers to growth, helping facilitate payment, enabling collaboration, avoiding investment in fixed assets, and using alternative funding mechanisms such as crowdfunding. Digitization is also changing how we trade in goods. For example, the growth of online platforms has led to a rising number of small packages being sold across international borders. This is giving rise to a range of issues for policymakers, ranging from physical management of parcel trade through the implication of risk management. Of course, when you are sending those small parcels, how do you assure the quality? How do you ensure that the goods being sold are not counterfeit? How do you collect tax, that is revenue on the part of the government, when small parcels are being sent across the country? Because in the conventional way, we know that when you export in a lorries or in bulk, and this is how we tax. But now they are being sent in small pieces. So how do you start taxing that? Rapid technological development also facilitates the rise of the, rapid technological development also facilitates the rise of services in international cross-border trade. Information and communication technology services form the backbone of digital trade, providing necessary network infrastructure and underpinning the digitization of other services. Now, what are the implications for the policy? Government has increasingly recognized that e-commerce offers a radically new way of conducting commercial transactions and will be a global driver of growth and economic development. As digital transformation has accelerated the e-commerce landscape has become increasingly dynamic. Some barriers to e-commerce at the SME, individual, and county levels have been overcome, while new barriers have emerged. The new business models have transformed buyer-seller relationship and pushed out the frontier of what is possible to buy and sell online. More firms are buying and selling online than ever before, including across the borders. And the absolute value of the e-commerce market is growing. This is true across the industry, including the traditional consumer-facing sector. Consumers are also increasingly buying online, benefiting from the convenience and increasing product variety of e-commerce. But even though it has never been easier to engage in international trade, the adoption of new business models has given rise to more complex international trade transaction and policy issues. In today's fast-paced and interconnected world, governments are facing new regulatory challenges, not just in managing issues arising from digital disruption, but also in ensuring that the opportunities and benefit from digital trade can be realized and shared inclusively. In order to better enable the government to support further e-commerce innovation, it is important that SMEs partner with the government, for example, in collection of e-commerce data to facilitate the development of more targeted policy that unlock the potential of e-commerce. Because even as we discuss the e-commerce by SMEs, it is not easy to know how many SMEs are engaged in e-commerce. And that is why the government intend to carry a census of all SMEs. And when you carry out that, the census, will be able to know which SMEs are engaging in e-commerce and what interventions do they need and what interventions can the government make. In conclusion, we need to look at what does the future of this new normal hold. That is the new normal, which has been, because everything has shifted because of COVID. Now we are living in the new normal. What does the future of this new normal hold, especially for the SMEs? Despite the challenges, opportunities abound as the global economy undergoes what is known as the Great Reset. The way we do business has irreversibly changed, and the business that adapt quickly to these changes while keeping an open mind and creating value in the new economy will undoubtedly lead in this new dispensation. New roads of opportunities are cutting their way into all our lives. Capital will seek out prospects in unlikely places. Opportunities will show up in global shifts in supply chains, in service delivery, technology, app education, and healthcare. Manufacturing is going back to its roots. External supply chains are fragile and are not as predictable or cost-effective as they were previously. It makes business sense to manufacture locally, at least regionally, and shorten the supply chain, and supply chains will be the norm. Government are also more inclined to promote local manufacturing. And this was clear immediately the COVID pandemic was declared. We found it very, very difficult to import some of the most important or essential goods, and this has made countries shift their mindset so that they can start producing locally. As a government, or what the government is doing is that last month, the government came up with a list of 300 items which must be procured locally by the government and all government agencies. Why is the government doing that? The government is doing that to promote local manufacturing. And most of these items are items which are being manufactured by the SMEs. Again, to support the SMEs, the government will be purchasing 250 locally manufactured desks to support 100% transition. And these locally fabricated desks, which are to support 100% transition from primary to secondary school, are supposed to be fabricated from within the area. If it is in Moyale, we get the SMEs in Moyale to do that. If it is in Busia, we look for SMEs in Busia to fabricate those desks. The same case Coast, Rift Valley, Nairobi, and all other regions, so that all these SMEs can feel effect of the government intervention. With this in mind, I would like to challenge the business to that is the SME businesses to ask themselves these three questions. The first question for the SMEs: are we resilient enough to survive this new environment right now? Each and everyone in SME must ask himself, what is his strategy for bouncing back so that he can survive the new normal? Secondly, how fast are we adapting to our new normal? How fast are we adapting? Are we fast enough such that we'll take advantage of the new challenges and the new opportunities, or will be too slow such that by the time we adapt, the world will have gone to another level, such that we'll have to make 3-4 steps to reach those people who adopted fast? And secondly, are we ready to embrace the new business model? Because if you are not ready to embrace this new business model, then most likely you'll be put out of business. The COVID pandemic has exposed a lot of fronts in what we called normal. What we used to think was normal, it is now abnormal. The global reset dictates that business considers that they may need to go back to basics, rethink their business models, and come with new business model which cope with the new normal. The ability of the SMEs to build a standout business in this new environment is within the reach of all SMEs. More than any, and that ability is important and necessary at this moment more than any other time. Therefore, we would like to ask and to urge all SMEs to adopt to this new normal. It is a tricky normal because, as we said, it's a shifting normal. And it is only those who are able, those who are, we said, who are resilient. It's only those who are ready to adopt the new normal who will survive. But we want to assure the SMEs that in the government of Kenya, they have an unwavering partner who will support all the SMEs and to go to go full length to ensure that the SMEs survive these new challenges which have come up because of the new normal. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Karanja. Given your legal background, you've been able to analyze and deliver perspectives from the SME sector in quite an incisive way. And we thank you for those remarks on behalf of Honorable Betty Minor, the Cabinet Secretary. And those remarks were being carried live on K24. We've received a lot of questions, lots of interest. We are being followed on Facebook. Some are directed to Dr. Njenga, some are being directed to John, some to yourself, CAS Karanja. I think I could just mention some of them. You'll notice in the chat feature and in the Q&A, I encourage you to look at some of those. And even as I look ahead to the panel, for Carol Karoga as the CEO of KEPSA, a little bit later, we're going to have a conversation as alluded to by Dr. Njenga. There's this network of private sector actors at the apex of which you sit. For banks like NCBA, where John Gashora is the head, we've had lots of roundtables with not only the executive, the president, but even with the legislature and at times the judiciary. So for Carol Karoga, when we get a little bit later, we'll try and unpack some of those discussions. Juliana Rotich, you have an illustrious background in technology. We'll be engaging you a little bit later in the panel. You've served on the Vision 2030 board, continue to serve. You are involved in quite a number of the interactions around the future of work, issues of the fourth industrial revolution. There are issues John, Honorable CAS, and Dr. Njenga have raised in some of their remarks and keynotes. And then for Kwame Owino, you have the background in matters economics. So allow me, speakers from this morning, just to read some of the questions that have come up. We don't have a structured Q&A session, but Bwana CS, I don't know if you have a minute or two, I can float some and then you can make some comments. John, if you're also available, Dr. Njenga. I'll read about 10 different reactions. You can see some of this on chat. So whatever stands out for you, please capture. We've got Bernard Nyanje, who's asking, how do SMEs stay afloat in terms like this of COVID-19 impact, coupled with almost punitive regulatory frameworks where SMEs are taxed at some rates as the same rates as the big players? We have Geoffrey Otieno, who's asking about the credit guarantee schemes. They can work effectively if we combine 4 key players: government, banks, insurance, SMEs. And Geoffrey points out we've presented a workable model to government and they're ready to help to actualize it. And this question for government, it needs to look into the legal definition of SMEs. Currently, we don't have a legal definition. So Bwana CAS, is it in terms of people? Is it in terms of revenue, people being employees? Is it revenue, formality, informality? We have Kamau Mbarire, who had a question. This topic of credit guarantee schemes was quite popular. Actually, we have Rosemary Okello asking, current credit guarantee schemes can work effectively if we combine 4 key players. So she's echoing what was raised a little bit earlier and asking how will that work. For Kamau Mbarire is asking, how is government COVID-19 pandemic stimulus package going to help SMEs in offsetting some of the loans they'll not be able to service? So John, as a bank and among the financial services sector players, you've given a lot of loans, they can't be serviced. How can government help? A question for CAS and Dr. Njenga. Could there be any chance, a possibility of government carrying out a registration drive of all informal businesses, including Mama Mbogas, with the motive of assisting them in skills and knowledge development to move to that next level? Again, Bernard Nyanje asked about credit guarantee schemes. What specific advantage will they bring to SMEs once it's operationalized? Is there a timeline for actualization? CAS, you had already alluded to aspects of that. John Sergon was asking, how does it work? Is it specific to SMEs? When will it be operational? Nico Diambo. Nico Diambo is a bit critical. So he's saying we are speaking a lot, nice speaking points, digitization, AI, big data, e-commerce. but he's talking about streamlining government, making it efficient. And I think an elephant in the room, not only for Kenya, but if you look at South Africa, the US, maybe other different countries, issues of corruption, tribalism, till we have a government that's selfless, whose main agenda is to serve, will go nowhere. So there's an aspect that's a little bit critical. And then there was a question quite precise from Mukoko, Joe Mukoko. Where do we get a list of these 300 items that have been earmarked for supply by SMEs? And then a final question, and for the panel where we'll be discussing later, I'll ask you also to reflect on some of these issues. Tax has been introduced on manufacturing machinery, which now makes it very punitive for SMEs to import machinery to start small businesses. Why was this done quietly? Can government do away with this importation tax to enable access to machinery and technology for more developed worlds and drive growth? So a whole set of questions, a whole set of reactions. Thank you for those who are with us here on Zoom. Thank you for those on Facebook. Thank you for those joining us from K24. I'll pose these questions. Dr. Njenga, Honorable CAS, I don't know who wants to go first. Do we hear from academia or do we hear from government? And then we can have a representative from private sector. So John, I think you might be here. If not, we can have somebody from your team. And Carol from KEPSA, I'll come to you a little bit later. We have quite an engaging panel. So Dr. Njenga, who wants to go first?
Okay. Yes, it's all right. I can say that Carol Karoga from KEPSA, my brain jumped a little bit. I do apologize. Carol, karibu sana na KEPSA. Asante sana. Now, just a comment. I am not going to answer directly any of the questions, but I'm going to raise a concern. And the first concern is SMEs should be supporting government in two areas, ensuring that services and economics are good at the level of what we call the community level. We do not expect the big companies to do that. The second thing is the following. Am I as an SME ready for support? Why do I say that? Number one, if I am alone, it's very hard for the government to look at me because I'll need 100,000, I'll need 1 million. Okay, whereas there are about 6 million other people in need of being seen. So as an SME, I must ask myself, how am I structured together with others to ask somebody to look at us because together we are strong? This is a concern that is very big in my heart. The third concern is, having been structured like that, can you prove your worth in receiving and paying back? Don't worry about the corruption around us. And I always say that if you keep looking at the pessimistic and bad side of a person, you will always be pessimistic and you'll never move forward. So for a while, we know all that problematic area of corruption and inefficiency and of government and also private sector. We know it. But you as an SME, what positive thing can you add here so that you're able to be supported? Now, here is where we are coming in today in this SME conference and telling you, my dear friend, number one, we must combine together. And I think here at the university, together with all the partners, together with KEPSA and the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we are here to help see how we can integrate it. Now, where somebody is driving a corrupt agenda, we have to change 180 degrees. And I don't want to give you so many stories regarding that. So for instance, when this credit guarantee scheme comes and the legal structures come and the STAWI program, which was announced by the CBK, comes, and all this funding of more than $100 million that is being supported, that is encouraging banks to lend to SMEs, And then when you go to the bank, they tell you, where are the SMEs? Hampo. When we call the SME program, you're here saying, how does the government support SMEs? When the government and the bank goes out to look for SMEs, you're so dispersed, you're not registered, you don't have a policy for formation and what you want. You don't have a structure for receiving money. Sometimes you use the money for family business and other businesses rather than the business. So we are here to ask ourselves as SMEs, okay, COVID-19 is here. Okay, we have, even before COVID, corruption. Okay, before corruption, we have not structured our family businesses, our land ownership, and so on properly. So COVID is just a little problem that has highlighted all the other weaknesses we have. So the question is today, what optimistic ideas, positive ideas do you have of growing SMEs as a stronger partner of government? What strength do you have to receive support from government? So today, I did not say I'm going to look at government. Today, I am looking at you and I who are SMEs. How do we strengthen ourselves to get support? Because if we are full of holes, then any water that is put there will disappear. And with that, even if it is a stimulus package, let me finish there. Yes, I will leave my other panelists to say something.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And for all our participants, the way we've structured this week-long conversation, later this afternoon, for those who have registered, we have a Zoom session where we'll allow for networking. So if you're not registered and if you're not in this Zoom discussion, for those following live, please go to our website, conference.strathmore.edu, click the register button, and you'll get a Zoom details about this interaction. We'll have your email address. We'll have a session this afternoon where you get to network as SMEs amongst each other. Next week on Thursday, around this time, we will give you an hour and a half to interact by sector and prioritize the issues you want government, industry, and academia to lead on your behalf. So even as you hear Dr. Njenga talking about organizing, we are trying to offer institutional structures for which you can engage. So Bwana CS,
kabla ujienda, wacha niseme tu kitu moja. Asanti Bwana Gashora for your speech. It was incredible. And thank you very much, our Honorable Honorable Lawrence Karanja, for showing the government concern about the growth of SMEs. I just want to plead with you. We have a long way to go. And I don't think if we don't unite together to solve this problem of SMEs, and not only to solve the problem of SMEs in this country, but to grow it and expand exports to the United States. Now we have the United States Free Trade Agreement and the AGOA. How do we get information to SMEs? How do we strengthen them? These are my questions as partners now, because I think SMEs alone will find it very hard to join together without props. And those props are you, Honorable Lawrence Karaja, you, my colleague John Gashora, you, Carol Karoga from KEPSA. We are the ones to follow, to give the base props for the SMEs to join together to get this support from government. And I hope we can stand firm on the good policies of governance and the passion for growth of SMEs. I just want to say thank you very much, Sir Honorable Lawrence, karibu sana. Na John, asanteni sana. Sasa wacha ni nyamaze.
Thank you. So Honorable CS, on behalf of the CS, I hope we didn't lose you. We may just have lost.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, karibu, I see you.
Now, on the one question which was asked is on the definition of an SMEs. And it's a very tricky question because it doesn't have a single answer. If you go to John and the bank and you ask them, what is your definition of SME? They will tell you, yeah, the turnover must be this and this and this. If you go and ask Dr. Njenga, what is your definition? because I'm sure Strathmore Business School has written so many papers on SME. Until we'll discuss this topic until cows come home, and we'll not have a serious agreement on what an SME is, because it depends sometimes on the field you are working. And as a government, we have Micro and Small Enterprise Act, which regulates small and micro entrepreneurs. And when but if you look at our definition, and then you go to Kenya Association of Manufacturers, our definition in the Act and the definition of Kenya Association of Manufacturers of what an SME is completely different. Again, that is the statutory definition, and the definition in some organization of what an SME is. Sometimes they varies. But what we may have to look at, that is, it depends on the sector you are in. You might be in one sector and you qualify as an SME, whereas in another sector, you are not an SME. Somebody asked about the registration of SME. Recently, through Small and Micro Enterprise Authority, we have created a registrar of SMEs, and we intend to have all SMEs registered, so that if you go to a certain place and ask, if you go to Meru and ask the trade officer in Meru or the CEC trade, how many SMEs are there in Meru, he'll be able to tell you, these are the SMEs we are having, this is what they are doing. We have these ones which are dealing with textile. We have these ones which are dealing with the cottage industry. We have these ones who are in dealing in the retail sector. And from there, you may be able to identify the intervention. But if you look at it now, national, we may say we have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 million SMEs, but it is even capturing the data on what those SMEs are doing is not accurate. And that is why the government is now going up with that through the registrar of SMEs to do a census, so that we can know the number of SMEs that we are having, what they are doing, and the interventions which may be required. Somebody asked about the list of 300 goods. I believe those goods were, the list was gazetted, and it is supposed to be reviewed every 3 months. So that, and what is the purpose of the goods which have given priority? The reason is because after doing our own evaluation, the government found that those 300 items, we have them locally, and we are able to meet the local demand from the local production. Therefore, to protect the local manufacturers, we say these are the first 300, and the list is supposed to be reviewed after every 3 months. So that if we get new items, they are added. And the purpose of that is this simple. You cannot stop importation of goods, but government and government agencies are customers. Therefore, you can say, myself as an agent, as a government, I cannot buy something which is imported, but I cannot tell a private citizen, don't buy an imported goods. Therefore, but you again know, one of the best customers to have is the government. Of course, there's so many things may be said about that, blah, blah, the process and everything. But I want to, the truth of the matter is that everyone wants to do business with the government. Therefore, the government is saying for some items which we can manufacture locally, and most of them, if you look at the items, the list of the 300 items, they are manufactured by SMEs. So, so if you want to get the list of the goods, it's available. I'll share you with the list, because it's online. I'll share it with the Strasbourg Business School, and then it can be distributed to the people who have participated, who have participated in this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable CAS, and thank you yourself and Dr. Njenga for fielding all these questions. For John, the questions were cross-cutting, so there were questions of the credit guarantee scheme. Those have been spoken to by the CAS. There's a question on STAWI. and the network of banks, what perspective was there with respect to that? And I think more generally, this question on loans, it was more targeted towards the bank, as towards government. If SMEs are unable to pay the loans, what will government do? I've heard Dr. Njenga talking about. Yes.
Martin, let me answer. I forgot to clarify what is the credit guarantee is all about.
That's okay.
Sorry,
And it will set the stage
the
for
credit
John.
guarantee is supposed to be for because it's the government. The credit guarantee is simply, there are some businesses which were adversely affected by COVID-19. And because of the way they were affected, their credit rating went down. Now, the government is, with the credit guarantee, is coming to guarantee, telling the bank that if these people come to your institution and they want the loan, and because of the negative rating, or their poor repayment during the COVID-19, they may not qualify for advancement of credit, will be asking the banks to advance the credit facility to these people. And then the government will be saying, in the event of default, the government becomes the guarantor. And I know where we are now that the remit, some of them, the problem might be the issue of the collaterals, and the government will be waiving the requirement of collateral for up to about Kenya shillings 5 million. So that is the essence of the credit guarantee, assisting the SMEs, which otherwise would not be able to access the credit facilities from the bank because of some previous record or history, or because of lack of collateral to assess the credit, and then the government becomes the guarantor to that credit facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable CS. John, you can just have a set of cross-cutting feedback. You don't have to answer question by question. I know we'll have an opportunity next week also with your team.
Sure, and thanks, Martin. As you say, I think it has been covered mostly, but I did want to first maybe start with a different approach of a question and say, what has the government done first? And then go to what can they do? Because I think often we forget that a lot of work has been done, and I want to pay special tribute here to the work Caro with KEPSA have done, the work Anne Mutahi has been doing, obviously the work Honorable Karanja, Dr. Njenga have all done, working with government to assist, especially during this time. And when I look at the journey we have walked since March 15th, when the president announced our first COVID case, I mean, CBK convened banks very quickly. We were down at State House within the following week, announcing measures that the banks were going to take on restructuring of loans, waiving of fees. They did very quickly work with the likes of Safaricom and other mobile operators to waive fees on money transfer, to allow those micro payments that assist SMEs. I think the presidential directives to make payments on long outstanding debt by government, that has been honored in an outstanding manner, more than I've seen it being done previously, where the president would make those directives. And I say that because we see the money, we see the liquidity comes through the banks. It's actually happening. Forcing large companies to pay SMEs. I mean, you have seen the actions being taken, unfortunately, on the poster child called Tuskies. I mean, that's work of government that is saying, don't allow large companies kill SMEs, make sure they are forced to pay their debt. A lot of close partnership between KEPSA and government to issue tax incentives as announced by the president. And beyond that, the work that they're doing on stimulus packages, such as Kazi I think it's Kazi kwa Vijana, all those, and then the work being done on the credit guarantee scheme. I think all those are efforts that the government has to support businesses. So I think it's important for us to remember government is doing a whole lot of things. If I then turn to the work that we're doing in Stawi, again, that was, whereas it was a bank initiative, it was a government convened initiative. The president launched Stawi. We worked closely. Anne again was very involved from government and others in government to launch that initiative. But the idea was really simple, that over time, we have solved what I call long-term capital investment need from the banks. That is available. If you're a well-organized business, you have long history, you have audited accounts, you can go to your bank and you'll be able to be supported for long-term investment. We also, through M-Shwari, KCB M-Pesa, and more recently, Fuliza, solved the problem of what we call short-term planned and unplanned credit. In other words, Fuliza is unplanned. Fuliza is where, unfortunately, somebody is at a bar, needs to make a payment, and they don't have enough money. It's unplanned credit. We have M-Shwari, which is a 30-day planned credit. KCB M-Pesa, 30-day planned credit. We have solved that side of the business. Where we have not addressed is where somebody doesn't have the history of business, doesn't have audited results or audited reports, but a small business needs a loan for a year, to construct a store, for example, or needs money for a year to buy a border, for example. That is what Stabi was supposed to solve. So it was a 1-year credit, repayments over a 1-year period, really highly negotiated rates of about 9% or so. You don't have to have a lot of history in terms of the business performance, but you have, to Dr. Jenga's point, you have to be an organized business, a registered business. That's the problem we were trying to solve. Still there, we're still addressing it. Stabi is still available. The uptake has not been as strong as we'd have wanted to be. And again, speaks to what Dr. Jenga was saying, that businesses will complain in the background, but the moment you tell them, come forward as SMEs, show us your papers, show us you're organized, show us you're registered, becomes a bit of a problem. And that's what we're asking. We are not asking to get audited reports before. We're just saying, show us you're operating, and you have the license to operate, and we shall support you. So that's what Stabi was supposed to do. But I think the other question, I guess, one may then ask is, okay, there are businesses that really have not performed. I have been very vocal about the disturbing trend we have seen over the last 2 years, where the auction pages in newspapers have gotten more and more. I think at my last count, the largest number I saw was 11 pages in the Nation newspaper was about auctions on the Monday paper. I mean, that really bothered the hell out of me. Even though 2 of those pages may have come from my bank, it really bothered the hell out of me. That's the truth. And so I've been very vocal about that point. I have given a lot of ideas, and I will continue to push where I think government can help. But by government helping, it doesn't mean helping individual businesses. It's actually because of actions to help the economy move forward. And I have listed actions like, first of all, making auctions work. So making auctions work don't necessarily help the business that's being auctioned or the person whose house is being auctioned. But what it does, it helps the economy move. There's no point having 11 pages of auctions and only 2 trades happen. Because why? You have stopped this business from functioning, isn't it? You've stopped somebody who has money in a bank who wants to buy that building but cannot buy it because the laws say that they have to pay 75% of the market price of that building. The market price is set on the last trade, which was done in 2016 at the height of the market. We just don't move. So it's those things. And I know Martin is giving me a sign that I need to stop, and I shall stop there. And hopefully on Thursday, if I'm here, I can say some more. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, John. Strong to serve, and both the brains and hands. I can see all those at work. What you've done, what Honorable CAS has done, and what Dr. Njenga has done is set the stage, top down. And our Madam Anne Mutahi, our representative, at least from the SME Office of the Presidency, in her closing remarks, these are some of the challenges she's here to listen to. So John, thank you very much. Honorable CAS, thank you very much. I'll shift gears now so that we can hear from the entrepreneurs. You've mentioned a lot of things. We've got Frida Kimathi from Card Group East Africa, an SME. We've got Derek Banga from Public Image, also an SME. Frida and Derek, I want to invite both of you. We've run over by 30 minutes and I apologize for that. I'll figure out how we'll recoup time. And for my panelists, I'll give you quite a bit of time to be able to engage. Frida, let's hear from you first. You've heard from government, from industry, from academia. Do you agree with what you've heard? Do you disagree? Tell us a bit about yourself and then respond in a cross-cutting way to the comments from the morning. The same with you, Derek. For all our participants, SMEs will have a chance this afternoon. We'll share with you a Zoom link between 2 and 4 p.m. You're welcome to join, it's optional. But for day 2 next week, we'll have very structured approaches where you can engage exactly like Frida and Derek. And on our website, we're also showcasing the SMEs. So once you register there, if you are interested, let's know about you. Frida, tell us about yourself and your reactions from this morning and set the stage for the panelists.
Thank you very much, Martin, for that. And I'm very privileged to be here. And let me say good morning to all the esteemed guests and also to the other people who are players in this sector and to everybody who has attended this conference. Now, my company is called Card Group East Africa. We started a business about 8 years ago, and our business is mostly to do with distribution, mostly to the larger supermarkets. And we also ventured into the retail sector. So we have three retail shops in the malls. Now, the discussions today have been very, very interesting. I think Dr. Njenga has really enunciated a lot of the sentiments that the SME sector experiences. And I think also for us, one of the biggest issues, I think Mr. Gashora has talked about, money being given from the government and it's given to the banks to lend to the SMEs. For us, we've found that sometimes you approach the banks and they are still asking for exactly the same things that they've been asking for from before, and you are unable to actually borrow from the banks. Somebody talked about the myriads of licenses we need. I think those are some of the problems that we experience. I mean, having said that, and I was actually asked to speak a little bit to my experience with NCBA, and I've been with the former NIC for much of my 8 years in business. My business is very cash intensive, which makes it one of the hardest businesses to be in, because I think every entrepreneur faces a cash crunch, especially in the first years of business. I'm not sure it actually ever ends. I think only the zeros at the end actually get larger when you need to borrow more and more as the business grows. But I must say, NIC have listened to me a lot. And that's not to say that I haven't been shopping for other banks. I have every now and again, but I think NIC has really walked the journey with me. I've had my big fights with them. I think Stephen Gakuya can attest to that, but we've always come to some form of understanding. I think as an SME, and I think someone also mentioned that SMEs should go together as an umbrella, and I think that's a very important point. A lot of our problems, even with KRA, would be solved if we were in one big voice to try and raise those concerns. So I'm very glad to hear from the industry players and the banks about the plans to actually look at SMEs in a different way. The bank has also, I mean, I also, in a lot of ways, the bank has been also very proactive for me. They are the ones who, one day in my inbox, I just saw an invite to the SME Enterprise Development Program, and it had a sizable discount. And I said, oh, as an entrepreneur, any good deal I will take. So I went not expecting much, but I really got a lot out of it. So thank you, Strathmore, and thank you, NIC. Then came COVID, and the first 3 months for us, I think everybody panicked. And for us, the sales went way down. And again, I didn't have to ask. I mean, my relationship manager, who has become a very close friend of mine, we talk almost daily, you know, they are the ones who approached me and said, do you want to restructure your loan? I hadn't even thought about it because I think we're all too busy panicking. And they were able to do that very quickly for me, which was for 3 months and now has rolled over, which is fantastic for us who need to really be cushioned against what is happening in COVID. And lastly, I would say in every crisis, there's an opportunity. And I think a lot of it has been touched on with the, you know, the credit guarantee scheme and lots of other things that are coming into play, which will make money a lot more accessible to us SMEs, which may not have been accessible had it not been for this crisis. For us, we've been lucky and we are ready for something like that because we are actually set to actually expand quite exponentially. And again, you know, I talked to my relationship manager and she says, you know, let's find a way, let's look for a way, even where it's not within the current policies. And that has been great. So I think for me, I would just tell my fellow, you know, SME managers or owners is just look for the opportunity and then be audacious and go and ask the banks or whoever else is lending for that money. Have a plan, have a solid plan, make sure that your books are in order. And, you know, sooner or later, something will come up. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. And I appreciate all the sentiments that have been shared here. And I'm happy to hear about the plans that are in place to help us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Derek, why don't I invite you next? We've heard from Frida. What's your reaction to everything from this morning? What's your reaction to what's going on? And tell us about yourself also.
Thank you, Martin. And good morning, everybody. I am delighted that I have the opportunity to talk at this auspicious occasion. I think the conversation this morning was particularly illuminating for those of us who run small and medium businesses in terms of what the government is doing, in terms of what the private sector is doing. And so as we continue to have these conversations, I think it's important that we as entrepreneurs play our part. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this wonderful program that Strathmore University and the Strathmore Business School has. My business is to help professionals increase their earning potential. And I do that by equipping them with the interpersonal and soft skills so that they can connect better with their clients, for example, through this virtual medium, so that they can communicate better and even exemplify leadership skills. My business is called Public Image, and I've been in business for the better part of this decade. Let me share with you a story. There was a man in a hot air balloon, and as he was floating, he was lost 30,000 feet above the ground, and he's floating along and he has no idea where he is. He spotted someone on the ground and he was able to bring the balloon down lower so that he was within speaking distance of this gentleman. And so he yelled out at this man on the ground and he said, "Excuse me, sir, could you tell me where I am?" And the man looks up at this guy in the hot air balloon and says, "Well, you are in a hot air balloon floating 10,000 feet above the ground." And the guy in the hot air balloon responds and says, "You must be in IT." The guy says, "Yes, I am. How did you know that?" He said, "Because everything you've told me is technically correct, but is of no use to anyone." And the man on the ground said, "Well, you know what? You must be an entrepreneur." And the guy in the balloon says, "Yes, I'm an entrepreneur. How did you know that?" "Because you don't know where you are. You don't know where you're going. You expect me to be able to help you, yet you are in the same position you are in before we met, and it is my fault." Now, that story illustrates perhaps not what all entrepreneurs are in that position, but possibly for myself before I joined the SEDEC program at Strathmore University. Here I am, I'd been in business for a few years, and business perhaps was not doing the best that it could be. But joining the SEDEC program helped me to provide practical solutions to the real life problems that I was facing. And I'm going to just illustrate this quickly in 3 areas. I know we're running short of time. Number 1 was the knowledge. So this capacity building in business management, whether it was through the basics of financial accounting, economics, statistics, marketing, management, organization of your business structure. Through a 16-week program, really the SEDEC program was able to help me and my business be able to begin to create these structures to help my business perform more profitably. Secondly, was the area of attitude. Now, attitude is something that is bad. That word is.
Okay, I think we may have lost Derek. I'm not sure. Professor Kiraka, I'll just confirm. Did we lose Derek? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I think we just lost Derek. But that's okay. We'll give him a window when he comes back. Yes. Why don't? Oh, you can hear him?
Martin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Because I think you're also breaking up. Or
Okay, sorry about that. Professor Kiraka, just take over briefly. The connection issue might be on my end. Derek, continue.
I think Derek is also hanging. I think
okay.
I think he's dropped off.
Okay, he's dropped off. That's okay.
But so you can hear it clearly.
Okay, excellent. Okay, that's okay. So what I'll do, just as we wait to get that rectified, sorry for the participants, why don't I invite our panel? We'll pick up again once Derek returns. Kwame, Carol, and Juliana, I've kept you waiting. I've taken about 30 minutes of the time we had been assigned for this discussion, but I promise I'll make good on it. Oh, Derek, you're back?
Yes, Martin.
Yes, sorry, we lost you
the
briefly.
Very thing that we're discussing where sometimes technology takes the better of you. And so
that's okay.
I've just to switch to another power source. So let me just quickly finish. I was talking a little bit about attitude and how participating in the SEDEC program helped me reevaluate my attitude towards my business, where now I had to look at it as something to be, shall we say, just say proud of, reevaluate perhaps where my priorities were and put my business in front. And then finally, it was about developing habits, and these are success work habits. And so the SEDEC program was able to help me develop these success work habits, whether it was putting in these structures, whether it was developing certain routines, whether it was the habit of, being able to, even, do your taxes on a regular basis. So all of this. And so I just wanted to say that particularly with what we're going through and the theme of resilience, and I talk quite a bit about resilience, and some of the earlier speakers have touched on it. Resilience is something that all of us have. We just need to be able to work on displaying the traits of resilience. And resilience is the ability to bounce back from events that perhaps have taken away from your normal routine. I will finish with this quote from Zig Ziglar, who is a marketer extraordinaire. Zig Ziglar says, "It is not what happens to you that matters. It is how you respond to events." And so all of us as entrepreneurs, this is the calling so that we can come out of this black swan, this event, with not post-traumatic stress disorder, but post-traumatic growth. And I think the SEDEC program is one of the things, if you enroll in that program, that can help you, but also being involved in events and conferences like today. So thank you very much for this opportunity. Asante sana, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much, Derek. Derek, if you don't mind, I'll actually use you as an example.
Yes.
I think you managed to hold on to excellence, and it demonstrated resilience when you faced that blackout. Over here, we were also worried a little bit and panicking whether there were issues of connection. I think it's a good metaphor for what's happening under COVID. You have a plan B, and are you always focused on delivery and excellence, even as you go through difficult times? So Derek, thank you very much, along with Frida, for telling us about the opportunities at NCBA and at Strathmore through their respective programs. In the course of the week, we'll hear more about them, and it's possible for participants to get more details from our website. Derek, asante sana.
Thank you, Martin.
Great. So let me make a segue to our panel. Kwame Owino, karibu sana. You can now turn on your camera, along with Carol Karoga over at KEPSA. And Carol, we've recognized you many times, I think largely as an appreciation for what you're doing in the private sector. And then Juliana Rotich. I'll introduce each of you briefly, and rather than go into detail, since we have your bios on the website, we have the link there, conference.strathmore.edu. I just want to acknowledge each of you as an innovator and somebody actively involved in the SME sector. Kwame Owino, as the head of the Institute of Economic Affairs, you're widely published, and you've been very, very targeted in the topical areas that you focus on with respect to the SME sector. Most recently, I saw some of your writing on issues pertaining to the digital economy, and also issues of taxation. And then more broadly, in a shock like this, how do you ensure that you keep the economy humming and you're not introducing all kinds of factors at a macroeconomic level that impact the country at a microeconomic level? And so Kwame, I'll invite you to give some perspective on policy implications, just broadly, in your opening remarks. Carol Karoga, you're the CEO in an organization that's the umbrella body for the private sector in Kenya, KEPSA. Your organization has been extremely active, preceding many other organizations, in these issues that impact the SMEs and the private sector in general. And I really liked what the CA said in his opening comments. At times in academia or to some degree in government, some things might be approached from a very high level. How do you break it down to a granular level for businesses, where it's about profit and to a large extent for sustainable businesses, issues of impact? And Carol, given all the efforts you're undertaking in these times of COVID, including some of your partnerships you may speak about with MasterCard Foundation, etc., this question of market sustainability, what can you share with us? And we have a set of slides I know you'll use in your opening remarks. And then finally, for Juliana Rotich, you've been a co-founder of multiple organizations and I dare say institutions. So at Ushahidi, which has been critical in not only in Kenya, but around the world, in giving a voice, I would want to say, to the voiceless, keeping individuals accountable. Over at BRIC, where you've made accessibility to the internet, access to the internet, simplified and efficient for the masses. And then most recently at Boya App, and hopefully you'll tell us a little bit about what you're doing there, I believe in the payment space. Beyond that, you've served in roles in government, in a governance sense. I mentioned earlier, you've been part of the Vision 2030 board, and you've also been part of a team thinking of the future of technology, working with Professor Bitange Ndemo, the showcase report on Fourth Industrial Revolution. So I think you're just the right panel to help unpack through these unique lenses what we've been hearing all morning from our keynote speakers, from the opening remarks, and from our entrepreneurs. And we hope we'll also see you next week. I'd like to give each of you about 6 minutes out of the 40 minutes we have together for if we have a hard stop, but we may extend it a little bit just to accommodate some of the time we spent. Since this session is recorded, if we lose some people, they'll still be able to capture that online. And I'd like to start with you, Kwame, for a macro level view. Just with a set of opening remarks, you've heard everything today. Tell us about yourself, tell us about the Institute of Economic Affairs, and let's get your reflections and your perspective. Karibu Kwame.
Okay, thanks for the kind introduction. I'm Kwame Owino from the Institute of Economic Affairs, and I'm glad for this invitation, but also for the presentations that we had, which have established a platform for some of the things that I'll say. Because I have 6 minutes, and I think that's enough, so I'll focus on 3 issues. So the first is looking at where the SMEs are in Kenya today. And I don't make a distinction between SMEs or they're micro or they're small and medium sized, just basically every business that's not the largest. I think the priority for them is safety of the workers in terms of the health possibility of infection. And this depends largely on what government does. So what government needs to do is actually to ensure that the costs of testing, because some of these businesses cannot reconvene or ask their workers to do the kind of interactions that enable business to proceed without considering the safety of workers. And you know that, so they need to test their workers and test them regularly. And those costs are still a barrier to the extent that you have to pay for them specifically. And in some cases, of course, the costs are something like from 7,000 to 12,000, as we've seen in the press. So what this means is that it's much better than it was certainly in March, April, and June. And May. But still, business people are concerned about if I ask my people to start to work, because the most important thing is to get people back working. So what government needs to do is to think about it in 2 ways. One, how do we make a mechanism for testing that actually is affordable for businesses so it doesn't damage their bottom lines? And the second one is to continue to test so that at all times business people can track and trace and know what the trajectory of illness is. It's certainly much better than it would have been before, and I think for that government must get some credit. But at the same time, people need to know what the trajectory is so that you're aware that you can protect your workers, but at the same time keeping them, whether it's delivery or interacting with your customers, will not be very expensive or will not lead to illness. So that first part is just basically the public health management part, which is government's responsibility. And at the Institute of Economic Affairs, we think the debate has been, or rather the discussion is wrong. There is no health side and there's no economic side, because we had a double shock on both the supply side and the demand side. So the best economic policy right now is to bring pandemic under control, because then that means that you're sending the signal to people in private sector, continue to do your work and continue to meet your clients, or at least with the safety safeguards in place, people can go ahead and try as much as is possible to get work. So that's work going. So that's the first. The second part I think has been emphasized, and then many small and micro businesses, because of the third quarter, if you remember the third quarter, the reports, or rather the second quarter of the year reports that 1.7 million jobs were lost. And that's massive, because the country creates between about 850 to 900,000 when it grows above 5%. GDP growth of 5% creates us 900,000 jobs in the country. So if in one quarter alone, 1.7 million jobs were created, that means the loss is the equivalent of 2 years of jobs in one quarter. So obviously that was serious depth. And what that means is that significant damage has been done to business bottom lines. So many of them will need to repair, many businesses will need to repair their balance sheet. And obviously there's the credit guarantee scheme, and I think it needs to be rolled out. The information about it and how business can hook in is important for business to actually know those businesses that have need to reestablish, get back their workers in place, and make sure that they're ready. Because my view is that I think the deepest part of the plow, of the trough, was passed in the second quarter. I think it will not be very strong in this third quarter, but obviously it's definitely going up because of what Kenyans call the reopening, but because of the restrictions have somehow reduced, and also because people know how to take safety. So that's the first. And then the third one, actually I have four, but the third one is the governments, whether it's the access to government procurement, will be essential, partly because many businesses are prepared to supply, and we understand the damage, the structural damage that has happened to many other farms. So I was glad when the CS mentioned that, that government has opened this opportunity and it's available. The point for me, however, is to ensure that businesses are paid and paid promptly, so that everybody can keep managing their receipts and keep their credit levels in good stead. Because we know if you provide an opportunity for all these businesses to go out there and provide a service to government or goods to government, I think they need to receive their payments very, very quickly so that they can stabilize their bottom lines again, but also more importantly, they can do the onward payments, which gets back, Kenyans say, money circulating in the economy, but actually just to expand the aggregate demand, which is one of the things that recessions damage. Finally, I think that it's very, very clear that yes, as many people say, the world has changed. I think it's changed in some ways, though I also think that people are exaggerating the extent to which one event would change everything. But definitely there are some things that will not be business as usual. And that digital environment is one that's going to happen to become increasingly salient and actually more dominant. But your small and micro business will not be able to hook in as well. So in my view, government should interpret the ability to provide platforms that allow for small businesses, whether through subscription or some mechanism, to be able to, whether it's through an app that allows them to apply, to meet their clients, to supply goods, to take orders without necessarily contact, or even basic business applications. And this could be done again by government floating out open source tenders, which allows for some competition. The best businesses will build so that there's a supplier responding to a business opportunity which government provides, and then this can be provided as a platform which businesses, depending on their size and provided they're registered, will be able to use for the new environment. Because yes, building on a technology platform is going to become inevitable for many businesses, but they will not be able to. If a business is not able to keep 2 of its workers in place, it is unlikely that they'll have the capability to actually invest in the infrastructure and the software that allows them to go into the new environment. But I think that will be useful. And government can actually do quite a lot by allowing for open source competition and then providing that available to business as part of public infrastructure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kwame. And I want to leave you the question as I invite Carol, just give it some thought. Who is your favorite economist?
Okay.
And I'll challenge you a little bit as the others are speaking. Think of Schumpeter and the issue of creative destruction and business cycles. And if we introduce this idea of national innovation systems, Freeman, Lundvall, and this idea that you have the farm at the center, the company, and then you have the broader ecosystem. If you were to make recommendations on how we should think of Kenya as a national innovation system or East Africa as a regional innovation system, Rwanda on its own, etc., how do we explore that? Just have that at the back of your mind. As I shift gears to Carol. Carol, I have your slides here. You indicated I can project them on your behalf. I hope that's okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, and then let me just put them into presentation mode. Carol, karibu sana. I'll just open the floor for you immediately. You've been mentioned many times. My apologies for the earlier slip up. I think at the back of our minds was also the Association of Manufacturers with Phyllis Wakiaga, your colleague, and I know you work quite closely. Your 2 champions who are helping transform what's happening not only in the country, but across the region and the continent. The floor is yours. What can you tell us about markets?
Thank you very much and good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'll take it up with Dr. Jenga because we come a long way. But Phyllis is, KM is a member of KEPSA, and so yes, they have such a good support in the whole big umbrella body of the private sector. And so they're some of the key major players in this, and they have taken even the role of SMEs, especially SMEs in manufacturing, very, very keen. We also have the tourism sector, which has an SME wing also on tourism, but we look at the whole umbrella side and SMEs. And as I begin my presentation, something that has been crossing my mind, and especially as we've been really, really focusing, and there are a lot of discussions around SMEs and COVID, and I realized we need to start rethinking on how we think about SMEs, and I'll say why. And it's a challenge to all of us. Sometimes I feel we look at SMEs as the way we look at youth, almost like it's not a passing,
Martin.
I'll just confirm, Julius or Professor Kiraka, is the issue on my end or on?
No, it's on her end.
Or Carol's end. So maybe I'll just give it a second and I'll wait on Carol. I'll see if she'll come back. Yeah, okay. So, Juliana, I can switch gears and bring you into the conversation, and then we can come back to Carol. She was talking about, I think, a change in paradigm. Juliana, is that okay?
That's fine.
Great. So, Juliana, you are a pioneer for so many. You are a role model for so many. I can't even begin to count. And I think for many, watching you receiving that global award in Germany, I believe it was in Berlin. I could be wrong. I hope I have the cities right. I mean, that was an epitome, and you've achieved so many firsts. In this area of technology, I just want to give you free rein. Fourth industrial revolution is what is on everybody's mind. SMEs, fourth industrial revolution seem like they are worlds apart. How do you reconcile that massive gap? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Martin, and thank you for the invitation to join you for this very important conference. Regarding, actually, if Kwame is still on the line, I'd like to give him some good news, because one of the things that he outlined was this need for an aggregator platform that connects SMEs to government opportunities. And one of the things that I would like to share with you today is around what are we seeing in the tech sphere that is quite encouraging, particularly at this really difficult time in our country's development. So this is a company called Scale. So if you go to scale.co.ke, it provides a platform for companies, specifically SMEs that are run by women, young people, and people with disabilities, to automate their tender application process. And I think, as many of us know, that there is an initiative by the government to provide 30% of tendering opportunities to make those available for women, young people, and people with disabilities. So that platform, Kwame, it exists, and it just launched a few weeks ago, and I would highly recommend it as an aggregator of opportunities and this really important link between SMEs and the government that we are currently talking about. And when we think about the fourth industrial revolution, and just to tie it back to your question about the fourth industrial revolution, the previous revolutions in history either were powered by the steam engine, quite literally and figuratively, but the fourth industrial revolution is powered by digital products that either make things much more efficient and increase the impact of whatever business there is. I'm obviously simplifying just to make it easy. But to tie it back to Scale and some of the things that I'm seeing with various companies being quite adaptive to the current crisis, is that the fourth industrial revolution provides an opportunity for us to think about not only SMEs, but also innovative technology startups as key to unlocking opportunities. Actually, one of the co-founders of Scale mentioned something that was really encouraging to me when he said that when crisis strikes, opportunity awakes. And when this COVID pandemic happened, obviously it was quite devastating to a lot of SMEs and also a lot of tech startups. So many of them have had to really just focus on surviving. It's been very, very difficult maintaining payroll in some cases, and it's been very, very difficult. So not only is it about surviving, but it's also about rejigging their business models in order to be able to provide services in a different and a new way that responds to the current crisis. I'll give a quick example of a startup that I've seen actually adapt to the current crisis, and that is MOOC. And for disclosure purposes, I'm also on the board of MOOC Africa. So the MOOC provides a platform for creative industry, musicians, artists, and others. And they've actually provided a platform for SMEs to be able to accept payments, because many SMEs have had to think about social commerce or e-commerce solutions in this time of pandemic, where it's very difficult to do business as usual. So that is one company that I've seen being adaptive and responding to the COVID pandemic. Last but not least is actually one of the bigger companies that we've seen, and this is an aggregator, another additional aggregator point for SMEs, and that is Safaricom with the M-Pesa app for SMEs. I think it's something to recognize and something to really think about, because these are, again, confluence points, be it the Safaricom SME app for till numbers and pay bill numbers, or scale. There's an opportunity to then connect these nexus points with the government, and other opportunities to give directly or to support directly SMEs. I think it's important to keep some of these to keep some of these initiatives and projects and products in mind. I will close with two more ideas. One is something that is actually in progress. And again, back to Dr. Njenga's introductory remarks about more that needs to be done with government. There is a startup bill that actually had a lot of input from companies that have been doing technology over the last 10 to 15 years in Kenya. And that startup bill is being championed by Senator Sakaja Johnson. I think it's awaiting publication. These types of bills are important because startup bills, or the current efforts around supporting SMEs, should all be geared around creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem, an environment in which SMEs, be they small, be they ag tech, be they smaller companies that are doing one thing or the other, it's about what environment are we creating for these companies to thrive or not. So that's something that is kind of encouraging, but then also something to look at and support to make sure that that is something that provides a conducive environment. Now, what else have we been seeing in terms of responding to the COVID pandemic is people wanting contactless payments. And this is an area which I'm really looking at through Boya app. It's a company that is testing a product where you can load all of your credit cards on your phone, credit or debit cards on your phone, and you can easily make payments from your card so that you don't have to touch PDQs. So this is something that is really interesting. And then all the other things that I'm also interested in through Atlantica Ventures is companies that are doing things differently in the agricultural tech space, Internet of Things space, B2B services like Scale and other companies, and even B2C. And I'll stop there, but the key thing I'd like to end on is when crisis happens, that there are opportunities, and Kenyans are some of the most entrepreneurial and innovative people in the world, and we have an opportunity to rise up and support each other and continue to work across sectors, because it's not just about startups, it's startups working with bigger companies and banks and government to create opportunity for those who are trying to be constructive despite very difficult global circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliana. And as I prepare to engage Carol again, I wanted to leave you with a question similar to what I'd done with Kwame. If you were to benchmark an ecosystem that is doing all the things you've shared really well, all those ideas that you've introduced, if you were to think of other innovation ecosystems in Africa, around the world, which innovation ecosystem stands out and why? And what can our policy makers, what can private sector actors, and what can government learn from that? I'll come back to you. I'll just give you some time to think around that as a second round of comments from the panel. And then for the attendees, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat feature. My colleagues, Professor Kiraka, Rosemary Okello, and Emily Kinothia, Julius Bibo are helping to aggregate those. Any questions for the panels, type them. If it's in Facebook, also type, we are tracking that. And we are going to aggregate that for the panel. Carol, welcome back. Sorry about that slight interruption. You were, I think along with Derek, you're both demonstrating this idea of resilience and excellence. So pick up exactly from where you left. You have this vision, I think there's this new way we can reimagine SMEs. The floor is yours.
Thank you, and my apologies, Kenya Power. We're still misbehaving, but at least I have some stand-up power, so I should be okay, hopefully. And so I just try and pick up from where I was, and also because of our time, also move very fast. So I was looking at and saying, how do we look at SMEs? And so instead of looking at it, sometimes how we look at poverty and say, we just need to give money, and or we are feeling guilty, so we need to do something, and instead and say, this is entrepreneurship. And every big company starts somewhere. It has to start small to become what it is today. And so a lot of people, so we have two groups on SMEs, the way at least we've been trying to, I've been trying to observe and see how things are going. So there's a group that goes into building an enterprise. And so they begin as a startup, as a small enterprise with a vision of where they're going and seeing themselves in 10, 20, 30 years as a big multinational, or at least a big large company. That's one group. And those need, so we have to think, how does the business environment look like for that kind of a group, so that as they start, what do they need, and to keep growing to that. And what Juliana said, it's just not about how the value chains, them supplying to the big companies or working with government and all that. They're just trying to build an enterprise where they can be themselves supplying and all that, or at least working with other businesses. Then there's another group of SMEs, and these are mostly what we call the MSCs, the micro, where I need to put food on the table. I don't have a job, I don't have anything I do. Let me do something that can put food on the table. Whether I'm the mama mboga, or I sell stationery, something that can put food on the table. And within that group, you find half of that group is doing that as they wait for something better. And out of that group, a section may start doing that with that intention, but end up realizing, actually, I don't need to get something better. This is working and I'm growing. And another, they're just putting food on the table. They have no vision. They're not thinking about growth. They just need food on the table. All those groups need a certain enabling environment. So for the group that's just putting food on the table, all they need is to know, I have a workplace I can go to. I'm not running around with Kajo every day from one place to another. Transport system is working well, and I'm able to access my produce and in a more efficient way. That's all they need, And then there's that group that is they start that way, but now they need some certain growth. So they start thinking, if I need growth, how can I access affordable credit? How do I access information? How do I link with other businesses? Or how do I access bigger markets and all that? That group now joins the group that had a vision of becoming big. And so when we think about the ease of doing business, we start thinking, how do they now register their company? How do we make it easier for them? How do they start now becoming formalized and pay their taxes? All that. So that's how I've started thinking about SMEs. And when we start thinking about that, then we start resolving something which I'll also mention as I present, something we did about a year ago. And that is the SME Policy Index, which is the first in Africa. And we came up with 5 areas of where we need to focus to get SMEs. But we need to think of SMEs in those 2 groups and in the subgroups. And then that will help us. So going into my presentation and what we've been doing along other years, I know the CAS mentioned about the SME Act. It's actually the MSC Act 2012, which is an act that, and Ann Mutahi will remember this, we did it as KEPSA through private members bill in government. And again, at that time, SMEs were being moved from one ministry to another. At one point, they're in labor, they're moved to trade, they're moved, and we felt they really are business. They need to be in trade. And so we worked on that bill and really presented it to Parliament and pushed it through Parliament. It became an act. Implementation has been slow, but it was good to hear the CAS mentioning it, and hopefully then we can get to we can start implementing it more, because it has a lot of the things that we are talking about today and that we have started implementing in pieces and in pieces. So so when we're talking about COVID impact on SMEs, which is where I'll start my conversation, because this is where we are latest in terms of SMEs. We did conduct a survey in May, June 2020, and we're doing another one by the end of this month. And 74% of businesses that reported high or very high negative impact due to COVID-19, 74% of businesses reported high or very high negative impact due to COVID-19, because as we all know, businesses around the world were affected differently at different levels, but they were. The highest impact was felt among the small and micro enterprises, where 83% and 76% respectively reported high or very high negative impact compared to 50% of the large enterprises. And because large enterprises have a lot of cushion, they can restructure their loans, they have savings and all that, unlike the small ones. Financially, 45% and 42% of the small and micro enterprises incurred over 90% losses compared to 8% of large enterprises. Again, value chains. If the large enterprises slow down on buying, government is slowing down. There was restriction of movement in some of the biggest business areas, that's Nairobi and Mombasa. So that did affect a lot of the SMEs. So based on annual turnover, the impact was highest among businesses with less than 5 million Kenya shillings turnover. I'll not go to a lot of that details that can be shared with participants just to see the details on that. Moving on to the next slide. So however, SMEs have been affected from the May-June survey. The most impacted aspects for majority of businesses were financial, liquidity challenges affecting 47% of businesses, especially the small enterprises category, where 51% were affected. Again, a discussion that has been mentioned by a lot of the speakers before. Inability to operate given travel restrictions, as I have said. Reduced consumer demand. Again, people went back to where it was survival. So it was more about food, and anything else that was shifted and was seen as a comfort or a luxury. So a lot of the SMEs in those areas were not getting as much. Access to markets, supply chains, disruptions, and high cost of operations are also major concerns for businesses across all size categories, and that did affect all of them. Despite the high negative impact, 46% of micro enterprises retained all their employees, which was very, very commendable, while 2% hired more. And a lot of those are mostly in the food food department. And then when they started making some of the PPEs like masks, we started seeing a bit of growth there. So medium-sized enterprises had the least job retention at 34% and small enterprises at 39%. Job retention was highest among large businesses, and over 300 employees, where 48% retained all their employees and 9% hired more. So even as we look at COVID, there were sectors that did grow, and mostly in the horticulture industry. We saw a lot of growth there because there was demand of food, and not only in the country, but we also started seeing demand, especially in Europe. And so at one point, we didn't even have enough cargo flights, because a lot of cargo also goes with the passenger flights. And so even KQ had to turn some of their cargo flights into, some of their passenger flights into cargo flights to accommodate that. Moving on. So what have we been doing to support SMEs before and during COVID? So continued advocacy. I mentioned about the SME Policy Index that we conducted in 2018-2019 to assess how facilitative Kenyan policies are to SME growth across 8 policy dimensions. The findings have continued to inform our work, what we call the public-private dialogue engagements on SME development with government. Then during the COVID period, KEPSA developed an economic management framework for COVID-19 response that focused on maintaining jobs and livelihoods, just how we really could help our businesses just to maintain some of the jobs. And I've given some of the numbers of those, how they maintained in the different categories. Prioritizing health and safety for employees, communities and healthcare workers. So we worked on workplace protocols, which we engaged with the Ministry of Trade and also the Ministry of Health, just so that we can continue to do that, protecting SMEs, and I'll share some of the programs that we did and we're doing, ensuring business and supply chain continuity, so that we started working very closely with the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Security on we're issuing permits of travel for essential services. So there's just some businesses that is continuing to move, mobilizing private sector capabilities and resources. And I think you saw a lot of the giving that the private sector gave into the COVID fund, which was run by the private sector, maintaining highest ethical standards, avoiding moral hazards. So even in terms of PPE like masks, we really worked with KEBS to make sure that the standards are maintained and we're giving people the right ones. And of course, you'll always find bad potatoes among ourselves, disseminating clear and accurate information frequently and promoting social stability. So that's a lot of what we are doing. On this SME Policy Index, those are the 8 areas. I will not go into them, but at least those are the ones that we are using to really, really engage government, partners, private sector on SMEs. Let's move to the next one. On the support programs for SME before and during COVID financing, we have a partnership with MasterCard Foundation on a fund to support starting with 400 SMEs by providing interest-free loans. Again, we mentioned and we had a testimony of how hard it's been for credit, and especially because banks will still sometimes ask for the same things, even though on this time, and it's not their fault, because also there's a risk analysis that banks have to do. They're also businesses and they also need to stay afloat. Up to 1 million Kenya shillings are repayable within 6 months, just for this period, to make sure that those that have survived through this COVID do not die off, and that those who are coming in because there are new opportunities brought about by COVID can now exist and have some funding. We have a partnership with what we call with Educate Global Rapid Technical Assistance Response Team to support businesses in food, health, and education sectors through financial restructuring, strategy review, and addressing critical operations issues that are facing due to COVID. And these are mostly the women and youth businesses and SMEs that are in those sectors. So we are looking at them and really working with them around that. Then we have partnership with Passion Profit Limited to train and mentor women and youth in business during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're using this opportunity and saying what opportunities are created by COVID that we can use for SMEs. Under the Business Hub, KEPSA also runs a training and mentorship program for women in business in partnership with the Embassy of Ireland. So all those who are in the women businesses, we do have this program for you. For market access, digital economy, KEPSA, we partnered with Trademark East Africa to implement on an e-commerce booster program to train 2,000 SMEs on e-commerce, digital marketing, and onboard them into various digital marketplaces. Juliana mentioned that we're in the tech revolution, so we need to get our SMEs into that platform if they're going to continue to do business. They can't continue just being on the roadsides. We need to ensure that they are also selling and buying through digital programs. Then participation in the ongoing participation in the ongoing trade negotiations to unlock market opportunities for SMEs. So we did form a private sector consortium, brought all the different partners, looking at who would be affected by the US FTA and the UK FTA and the Africa FTA. And in those areas, we are looking at how do the SMEs plug in? How do we ensure that they're protected, but how do they engage in the business? Whether it's capacity building, whether it's access to markets during this free trade area. So it's one of the sections that we are looking at very carefully because we through the private sector consortiums. In the ESC region, a key market for Kenyan SMEs, KEPSA has been actively involved in engagement to resolve trade disputes We've had issues sometimes. Chicken can't move from one market to another, or we have flooding of eggs from Uganda. So our SMEs on this side are suffering. So those are some of the NTBs that we engage on a everyday basis, and also just free movement, that people are not stuck in the border posts and can't do business, because sometimes the SMEs, for the smaller businesses, you have planned 2 days, you don't have enough. You've not planned to be at the border post for 3-4 days, which costs a lot of money, and so you need to go and be able to come back. And so those are some of the things that we are working on. Then championing private prioritization of local content in public and private sector procurement through the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya. Again, this was mentioned by the CAS, and then the initiative under AGPOM. And so under this, what we did, we held what we call the first Supplier Diversity Summit in September 2019 to encourage more inclusion of SMEs owned by women, youth, and people with disability in supply chains. And that was very effective. And we want to be able to we had hoped to do another one this year, but looks like we may not be able to do that right now, but I'll be involved in the KCB Supplier Summit tomorrow. So again, just to continue to, even when we they don't see the opportunities in government right now, but they can also do that with business. Renovation of market infrastructure. So we are working with government to renovate market infrastructure. I think it's a very sad situation to drive along our roads and our streets and our highways, and you just see all these traders along the streets, along the roadsides and along the streets and the highways, because they need to earn a living. But we need to give them the markets, because first of all, it's very destructive for all of us, even plus the drivers and all, the security, the health of those people who are selling and buying from the roadside. People accidents. So we find that most of our roads now all have bumps all along the way, even highways. But that tells you there's a problem. As someone says, whenever you see bumps, tells you that something has failed. And so that's some of the things that we need to work on. Revival of the old meter gauge rail to ease logistics and open counties for investment. The Nairobi and to Nanyuki is done. Naivasha to Kisumu is on the way. Voi to Taita and Taveta is also on the way. So opening all that so that there's transport. As I mentioned again when I started, I said, when we think about what the SMEs, basically businesses, and where SMEs are just part of the business chain and value chain, what they need. So transport is a big thing, so they can be able to transport their wares and their goods and move themselves to be able to do business. And then information sharing. So we're running, since COVID started, we've been running a 24-hour call center. Our number is #1196, and an online portal, www.covid-19.ke, to support businesses by providing all COVID-19 related information and facilitate linkages, e.g. between SME suppliers, local manufacturers and consumers through the KM online directory, which is in the online, the directory is there, the contact, but it's under the online portal. So you can find all that information there to ensure supply chain continuity. So I'd like to stop there. I know I've gone very, very fast, but I hope it has given you an idea of what we're doing around for this sector and how we're starting to rethink that sector.
Yeah, Carol, I actually appreciate that very detailed presentation, because there are members of our participants' audience who want exactly that level of detail. What do they do? Where do they go next? The question I have for you, similar to all the panelists, and you'll have some chance to think about it as I go back to Kwame. Some of my colleagues here, Rosemary Okello, Raymond Mutura is part of the audience, John Sergon, I've seen him somewhere there, Brian Omwenga, who I think is one of your, part of your team at KEPSA in one of the ICT committees, were very privileged to work under the KEPSA banner in engagements with KRA on issues of taxation. So we've heard a lot about the digital economy. At the back of your mind as KEPSA, with partners like Dr. Njenga at Strathmore, and think of all the other universities in Kenya around the region, CAS, Madam Anne Mutahi, there are all kinds of new institutional and organizational structures we should be thinking of in an innovation system, ecosystem, that not only responds to COVID, but that prepares for the fourth industrial revolution. Can you start reimagining what these institutional partnerships could look like? And picking from something I think you've done very well, wherever I go, people say, if you want to talk to the president, if you want to talk to the speakers, and you even want to speak to the Chief Justice as a business, who do you go to? Go to KEPSA. because they have regular roundtables. And you'll notice what we did in 2018 for the micro space, I think borrowed from aspects of that kind of structure, worked very well. We're privileged to have an opportunity through Madam Anne. What does that future look like, particularly around the issues Juliana was raising of who SMEs are and some of the things I think Kwame might allude to? So think of that. Imagine you're casting a vision. We have in the audience here people behind those kinds of organizations. We've got very, very good questions in the Q&A, and I can read some of them. I've tried to fill some of them directly. I think maybe we have one or two. So there's a question from Jaspers. Does KEPSA fund groups such as self-help, women groups, community-based organizations in their partnership with MasterCard? What are the requirements to qualify for the fund? Some were very practical. There are some I missed from the first round. I'm not registered. Can I start as sole proprietor, then convert to limited company as business grows? That was from Derek and Ampio much earlier. Derek, if you talk to a team at SEDEC and NCBA's business clubs, I'm sure some of those can be addressed. So exactly how does this good research and records trickle into action that impacts businesses? If I've missed any questions, Professor Kiraka, Rosemary, you'll guide me to them. There were some questions that were asked directly to the panelists. And I think, Juliana, you had at least one of those. General data protection, this might not be the one, but it might be among them. General data protection, GDPR, are there any efforts in adoption of GDPR in Kenya, Africa region? As SMEs, how sensitive should we be towards GDPR? Regional authorities we can reference, are there any? I think you've gotten another one, Juliana. How can we create data literacy among the SMEs for them to benefit in the digital economy? And then there are very many links shared there. People want to get copies of the presentations we've made. Carol, yours was very popular. They're asking, can they get, and all the other videos here, people want them, I think, for their development points. It's actually 11 a.m. sharp. So panelists, you're the ones who tell me, nimepeana kionjo. Do we stop here? The time said we stop here. Do we stop, or do you have maybe 10, 15 minutes? I'll follow your advice. Kwame, Carol, Juliana, do we stop?
You can do another 10 minutes. So
10 minutes, good. So maybe each of you about 3 or 4 minutes. You can incorporate those questions and also use them as your set of closing remarks. And the question I seeded for each of you at the beginning. So we'll start with Kwame. I see there was, yeah, there's one more question there, but you can check in the feed just in case I've missed anything. Kwame?
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Martin. I'll just answer the question that you asked me first. I think you asked me about who's my favorite economist. My favorite economist is actually a guy called George Stigler. He was a fantastic microeconomist studying regulation and competition in markets. But he's passed on. So right now, the guy who's alive, who's my favorite economist, and I hope he wins the Nobel Prize soon, is a guy called Paul Klemperer. Again, a fantastic guy who designed the auction system for the sale of spectrum by the UK government. I think in 2004, raised quite a lot of money for government, showing that you can actually monetize what people think of as these assets that government holds. So his work shows that microeconomic theory actually applied works. But then you asked about Schumpeter, who was a fantastic economist, Hungarian guy, of course, who taught in the US. And he taught in the US, Joseph Schumpeter, and he came up with this theory. And it's true. One of the things that entrepreneurs are sure about this, many people don't like, but one of the things that entrepreneurs see about even a crisis of this kind is that some farms will inevitably die. And they'll die because either they were inefficient, they were right on the margin, so any shock lets them go. That's not by itself a bad thing, because from that, other new farms are created from that experience, but also because less efficient farms, it's like an evolutionary thing. So less efficient farms will be decimated, and the more efficient farms actually become more efficient, and their social welfare benefits to society actually increases. So I think some of that will happen. Nevertheless, it's a good thing for government to do as much as it can to ensure that farms that suffered entirely because of this shock and not necessarily because their bottom lines were bad can actually recover. So coming, the final point I'll mention is, I hear Kenyans speak about fourth industrial revolution, and I ask myself, maybe I think we're trying to bite more than we can chew, the truth be said, because I'm also a student of economic history. If we are not been able, in the last 15 years, Kenya's share of manufacturing as a share of GDP has been shrinking. So even manufacturing based on the industrial revolution ideas of 19th and 20th century, we have not advanced. And we are talking about fourth industrial revolution. We need to be very humble about these facts, especially because the fourth industrial revolution and robotics and all those other things depend on the same infrastructure that we've had here. And the reliability of that infrastructure itself in our country are actually policy questions, because can government even ensure that we can have a webinar of 4 hours without any of us falling off? It can. So those are the things it needs to do. Go back to basics, and from those basics, business people know for themselves. And finally, as I stop, one of the things the IEA is doing right now is a fun project, which is basically to count the number of robots in Kenya by trying to find out how many farms have robots. In the sense that we're just writing to farms and asking them, do you have robots? What are those robots doing? And trying to just do that as a way of tracking what the future will be. Is the fourth industrial revolution promising? It's extremely promising, but we're not going to leap that far if we cannot ensure that the country has power uninterrupted for even 24 hours. Thank you very much. But it's still clear that our future are small and micro enterprises. And actually they're big future in terms of not just providing employment, but the possibility for growth and ensuring that we step into the 21st century with more confidence. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Kwame. So what The Economist is saying for the tech entrepreneur and the private sector umbrella representative is we need to focus on the basics before we go after the big things. Juliana, your closing comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I think we'll get into a rabbit hole, but I do agree that I think one of the most important things to think about is resilience happens because of the failure of the basics, like Kwame put it. And the resilience is happening despite those failures. So, we have a long history of thriving despite really difficult circumstances. So I do agree, and I think for each of us in our various spheres to figure out how can we advance our efforts and make sure that we're really trying to turn the needle on progress for our country. And to the question that was posed around how do we create data literacy for SMEs, I will smush it together with the question around GDPR and data protection by answering it this way. We need to build better. The best way for SMEs and for most people to use not only tools or to use tools to help their businesses thrive is by learning by doing. And for all of us who are involved in the tech sector, when we build tools that inform SMEs, be it with smart nudges or really providing opportunities to those SMEs through those tools that they're using. And I think you're starting to see some of this with scale, is that when we create tools that help people to learn as they do, it's a very effective way. The second part of how we can encourage data literacy is also creating awareness and being respectful of the agency of the users of our products. This now goes to the data protection and GDPR, because GDPR and data protection is really about respecting the agency and the information that any user is providing to us as a tool, as a company, or as a tech solution maker or whatever. So we can build tools that continue to think about these ideas of privacy by design and not privacy as an afterthought. And again, it goes back to respecting the agency of our customers and users as we engage with them. And I'll just end with the thought around this idea of constructive constructive values. So, you know, one of the things that technology is really useless without people. So even if I think some of the best ways that we've seen robots being used, or some of the newer technology around drones or other forms of technology, even apps, it ticks when it's actually of impact and of importance in solving a problem for a massive number of people. So again, this big opportunity that continues to be, in my opinion, quite inspiring and encouraging to me is just the opportunity to create a solution that solves a problem for millions of Kenyans. That continues to be something that drives not only myself, but also the companies that I would like to invest in more. And I think I'd like to end there, that the opportunity is really to serve people through technology.
Fantastic. And I think that sets the stage for Carol. So we are hearing from Kwame, you know, let's work on the basics, then we can think of the bigger picture. And Juliana rightfully points, if we begin that conversation, it can go south fairly quickly. Yet I hear quite a bit of excitement, I think, Juliana, even from your own voice as an investor. There's something special happening in Kenya. So Carol, for some of the questions that have been raised, there were a few more in the chat. Your closing thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much. I think let me begin by, and I'll end with a quote of my quote. But I think from where Kwame says and where Juliana, they're both right. But as a student of economics, like Kwame, one of the things that I've taken and being in the business sector for more than 15 years now, I tend to see that Africa is taking a very different path of the development path, in the sense that because there are those who are ahead of us and those who have moved from one development stage to another, we tend to have all those development stages at the same time for Africa. And so we cannot stop and do the basics, then catch up, or say basics don't matter, let's go for the digital only. I think it's to go with both. Keep working on the basics, fix the basics where we need to fix the basics, and where we are ready for digital, move to digital. And I'll give you a good example in the textile industry. For a long time, people said that with the textile industry, because it's labor intensive, so let's move to the textile industry. Because it's labor intensive, we can employ many people. Then the digital economy came and people started saying, if we bring technology in the textile industry, then we'll lose all those jobs. Actually, from experience and having visited some of the textile industries that we have, and one of the largest manufacturer of textiles in the country, I realized what I experienced was actually a very different story. Tech has increased jobs for him than reduced jobs, because he's able to produce so much more with tech at much faster speed. He's had to employ more people so that and increase his productivity. So we can have the two, but it doesn't mean we don't fix our infrastructure. We don't fix our ease of doing business indicators and our cost to doing business. Those must be done. But where tech can be employed and where digitalization can be employed, we do that. And especially COVID has taught that a lot of us. That's why today we would have said, because we still need to fix certain basics and we can't have conferences because there's no, we're not yet to get to digital, then we'll not be doing what we're doing today. So we need to do both to move ahead and employ what is available. That would be my response to that. So both are right, but I think we need to do both. I've seen a lot of questions about the MasterCard Foundation. We are putting in the investment committee that will set up the requirements to access the fund. So we'll advertise that very soon and put out the requirements in the public so that you're able to apply for that funding. Initially, we are working with the 6 months, but as we go on, we are very flexible with MasterCard, and we'll see how to go about increasing that and what we can do more. Others have asked, but I'm not a KEPSA member. It's very easy to join KEPSA. I think there's been a very sometimes we work in a very critical environment. So you'll find people who will say, oh, but KEPSA is for big people. I think I've demonstrated by the things I've said what we're doing with the SMEs. To become a KEPSA member as an SME is very easy. We have a category for SMEs, and all you need to tell us is if you've been in existence for less than 5 years, we'll tell you what to do, or over 5 years, and we'll tell you what to do. We make it very flexible for that category. But the idea is so that we can give you the opportunity to network with other businesses, do businesses, get capacity building, and grow your business from there. And so let me end with this quote. Oh yeah, I forgot to answer the question that you asked me about with the universities, with the government, with the digital economy, what we can do. I think it's working together. What we have found in KEPSA is the power of working together. And our greatest strength is bringing everyone together to work on an agenda. And so I would propose for Strathmore and other universities, if you'd like to, we bring other universities together and we sit down and really say, how do we move with the digital economy as we continue to fix the basics? And we can work together on an agenda and from the beginning to the end. So that's our strength. We bring people together, we network, we connect, and with everyone, locally and globally. So that would be my response to that question. And so I would end and say, for SMEs who are here today, and for many SMEs out there, our attitude should be, mimi si mtu mdogo and I need help, but I'm an enterprise on a growth path. That will change how we look at things and how we move. So I would like to end with that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carol. And with that, I think it brings us to the end of this really engaging panel session. For all the participants, if you look in the chat feature, we've included a link there. Please copy and paste that Zoom link. That is what we are going to use for the afternoon interactive session. If by any chance you come back here, we'll have somebody manning this session. They'll give you access to that Zoom link. Between 2 and 4 p.m., we just want you to get together. We'll break you into what we call breakout rooms in Zoom. So we'll try and make sure there's about 15, 20 people per room. And you get to talk about your business. You get to talk about your challenges and your aspirations. It's purely an opportunity to network. So I invite and encourage everybody to join. And I'll finish off with something that all the three panelists have talked about, and that debate around Kenya. Should we focus on the basics or do we focus on the more advanced aspects? And my late professor, Kalestas Juma, and a fellow colleague who was based at COMESA, Francis Mangeni, wrote a very interesting book called Emergent Africa. And it looks at the works of a particular Nobel Prize winning chemist, Prigogine, and argues that the path ahead is typically a convergence of some of the challenges that have informed the path that have led you to your current point. And we can argue that Kenya is at a very interesting point. So there are things we are doing exceptionally well, and we are known for. There are things we are not doing as well. With this COVID-19 pandemic, I think to Kwame's point, some companies will not survive and some new companies will be born. And it might be the same in this SME sector. We wanted today to be a top-down conversation. We've heard from experts, we've heard from our leaders, we've heard from various actors. And as my Professor Mugabe and Mudida typically challenge me, how do you bring all those things down to the ground? So starting with today's interaction, and I encourage you to join us next Thursday, same time, 8:30 to 11:30. Let next week be bottom up. Now that we've had all these things, what solutions can we work with? In the course of the week with my colleague Rosemary, Professor Kiraka, we'll try see if we can do a 1 or 2 hour session. We'll send that on Zoom for those who are registered. My single request for each of you who are still here, we're about 153 in Zoom. We picked at 160, but we've had, I think, multiple hits approaching 1,000 since this whole exercise started. If you enjoyed today, tell somebody about it. Ask them to go to conference.strathmore.edu, ask them to register, or tweet hashtag virtual SME conference, And let's all meet together in a week's time. I want to sincerely appreciate Madam Ann Mutahi. I notice you've stayed with us right from the beginning to the end, and it's a trait I've seen in all the events we've done. And in many ways, we appreciate you're the ear of the topmost level of the executive, the presidency. So a lot of the ideas we have here will find life. On our website, we're going to post all the videos. I think Julius Buibo and his team, Michael Geshore, etc., Dennis Karanja at NCBA will make all these available. And all the slides, everything will be accessible through the conference site. So with that, Professor Kiraka, in a minute, I was supposed to use 5 minutes for closing. In a minute, please, you can say thank you and invite us, maybe bid us goodbye if you're still with us, Professor.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you everybody for being here. We are, I think, sensitive to time, so we don't want to sort of stretch this any longer than we should. But I greatly appreciate our panelists. Thank you for all the great insights that you've shared with us, and the keynote address as well. I said at the beginning that the purpose of this conference is to really look at how we can be resilient, i.e. be able to bounce back, and also how we can be excellent. And therefore produce the best despite the challenges. And from the conversations you've had, I think it's clear how we can be able to achieve both. Looking at the digital aspects, looking at access to markets, I think it's clear that many businesses will bounce back and even perform better. We have been told that some might also disappear and never come back, but even for those that disappear, it's probably an opportunity to do something different and to do something unique, to reinvent our business models, to reinvent our products and services. So it's been a great forum, and we greatly appreciate all of you, and we hope you can all join us, even our panelists, you can all join us next week as we listen to the sector-specific issues that will come up from our breakout sessions and bring all that together into action points and way forward. So thank you all and have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Professor. And with that, we are done with today's session. Sorry, we've run 20 minutes late. At least we've saved 10 minutes of the 30 we had lost. And we give that back to you. Have an enjoyable rest of the day. And we look forward to seeing you this afternoon for the interaction, those who choose to join. And next week for the day 2, for those who will be with us again. Asante sana, and see you next week and later this afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.